to him, we get away from shirk and from mindlessness and ghafla. And the whole text, the whole 33 windows are all different aspects to show, or they are kind of tafsir on the ayah mentioned at the very beginning, which is the 53rd ayah of Surah Fussilat, Surah 41, which is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We shall show them our ayat, our sign or signpost in the furthest horizons and within themselves, fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim, so that it will become clear to them that this is indeed the truth. Is it not enough that your Rabb, your sustainer, witnesses all things? So we want to be able to see everything, the signs, the messages from beyond, in everything, in the world around us and within ourselves, so that it becomes clear that this is the truth. That usually this is between bracket this Quran, but this Quran is also the creation, the message that is coming through to us from our sustainer, whether it's through the revelation, the book, the scripture, the Quran, or through his creation. So since we had a break, if you remember in the 11th window, we reflected on the importance of remembering God, dhikrullah, and how shirk is precluded, not only because it is incompatible with sound reasoning, but also at the same time, it contradicts the heart's deepest longings and desire. And it was the 11th window started with reflection on Ayah 28 of Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah 13, where we are told, those who believe and whose heart find their peace and tranquility in the remembrance of God, for truly in the remembrance of God, hearts do find peace and tranquility. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. We also need to keep in mind always that when we are not getting close to God and remembering God and seeing and finding his countenance wherever we turn, we are away from him. So it's not, there is no in between neutral space. We are either with God remembering him, or we are not remembering him. It means we are not with him. And that's why in Ayah 36 of Surah Al-Zukhruf, Surah 43, we are told, وَمَنْ يَعْشُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّدْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Whosoever remains blind to the remembrance of the compassionate, we assign to him a Satan who is then a companion unto him. A qareen becomes like a second self that you are not even aware of. So the main message of Ayah 28, Surah 13, which was the topic of the 11th window, is that inner peace, tranquility, reassurance, rest in knowing God and remembering him constantly. Remembering him constantly because when we know him, since we know him through his creation, through his creativity, then anything, any being, any event will be a reminder of God, making him known to us through his beautiful attributes and qualities. So this is another reminder of how crucial. It is to confirm the oneness of the Creator, Tawheed, to affirm Tawheed is an affirmation, and to know God as the sole maker, the sole creator, the only sustainer of every single thing, including ourselves and our actions and achievements. In the next window, which was the 12th window, we were taught how to get to know God so that we can see his countenance in every event, in every being, in every creature, or in every creation, let's say, and so that we can remember him by means of his creation. Remember, the creation, they are ayat, signpost, making him known. So, how do we interact with the creation as ayat that are constantly making our sustainer, our maker known to us, so that we are in a constant state of dhikr, of remembering him. And so how do we remember God? By glorifying him. And the 12th window is glorify Surah Al-A'la, the first three ayat of Surah Al-A'la, Surah 87 is سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, glorify the name of your Rabb, your sustainer, the all highest, who has created and given order and proportion, and who has determined the nature of all things and guided them towards their fulfillment. So you see, we're invited to glorify our Rabb in the first ayah, and immediately after, we're provided with the guidance as to how to glorify the name of our sustainer. And that's also the explanation why we need to glorify him. When we understand how to glorify him, we also understand that we find ourselves, let's say, in a state of, unless we are totally ungrateful, and we will feel the need to glorify him with praise, to be grateful, to praise him, to appreciate him, to appreciate his gift and his creativity and his sustaining everything, including ourselves. And so the more we observe the creation and pay attention to how everything is coming into being with order and proportions that are suitable to wisdom, to benefits. This was not only emphasized in this window, but from the very beginning, if you remember. It was all about wisdom and the benefits of everything that is created. The order has a purpose. And so the more we see the order and the wisdom within and the planning and the administration, we understand how they indicate the necessary existence of this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-wise, all-merciful, all-giving, and you can carry on with all many of the beautiful names of God that are reflected in his creation. Which means in order to see this thing, we need to look carefully, mindfully, in the way we are taught in the Quran. And only then we can testify that La ilaha illallah, there is no creator except God. There is no maker except God. There is no sustainer except God. There is no knowing or no powerful one except God. God meaning except one who has all these attributes that can comprehend and everything. And I don't want to go to the details. One of the windows was actually more than one of the windows was about interconnectivity, how everything is interconnected. So the maker of one thing can only be the maker of everything. We've seen the Hadiyya Wahidiyya arguments and reasonings. all those are ayats as well. The way things are created is also an ayah. Actually, the interrelationship between things is the biggest ayah. So we understood that when we look this way, we get to witness and testify how everything is glorifying God, and they are testifying to his beautiful attributes. They are reflecting them and mirroring them and praising him and proclaiming his beautiful names. And so our tasbih is related or is incumbent on realizing how everything is glorifying God. When we realize how they are glorifying God, and when we choose to participate in their glorification, we start glorifying God through and by his glorifies him with praise, or there is nothing that extols his limitless glory and praise. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. And so then there was this, again, the emphasis that all beings make tasbih, they all glorify God, meaning they declare the perfection of their maker, and they declare the way they are created, the way they interact with each other. They are proclaiming that he is beyond any deficiency that we may attribute to him, which we often do when, for instance, when we assume, not only when we see something as deficient or not perfect, but also, and more importantly, when we assume that things themselves, including ourselves, exist independently of their maker and their sustainer, as if we are doing things, as if beings are themselves doing things, as if God needs them to do whatever. And that's why tasbih is related to negating shirk. We say, Subhanallah amma yushrikun. We glorify God. He's beyond anything that we ascribe as partner to him. He does not need any partner. He is the creator 100%, full stop. It means I am creator 0%. Water is creator 0%. If I think that I'm a creator a tiny bit, that tiny bit, I am stealing it from God's creating, from God's power. And when we look at things in the way we've been taught in these, through these windows, when we look at things through these windows, so far, we understand that there is no way I can create anything. I cannot even sustain my own life. How can I proclaim that anything that comes through me is from me? When my own life, I cannot sustain it. My own breathing, I have no means, no way to control it or to sustain it. If it stops, that's it. It's the end. And everything else is like me. When we are in ghafla, in mindlessness, we project our delusion, our illusion that we are creating onto everything else. And it seems like things can or are producing results. They are creating things that produce effects. That is the delusion of ghafla, of mindlessness.
Dr. Yemen, if I can just jump in with the comment here. I know you're recapping at this time, but regarding this praise, everything making tasbih and glorifying and praising, it occurs to me that I personally feel I live in a climate where the opposite is being done, and that people or the things that I read or interact with, they tend to try to praise and glorify human artifacts, especially I see that for science and technology. At the same breath, they tend to try to make up excuses to not see the perfection and the way things are, to try to kind of see maybe this isn't perfect enough or whatever. So eh, I wanted to note this because this means that I personally feel I need to be really awake when I'm interacting with these um, messages, because just because they're so common and they're in fancy textbooks doesn't mean that they are truthful. Actually, they're very, very misleading. Um, the so-called, imperfections in human body, or people have these references. And if you look closely, it's just about um, things that we haven't discovered yet, and an immense amount of blindness. I have heard people, praising iPhone and how amazing it is, or it's something that was produced in the lab, and in the same breath, completely, looking over or just quickly passing over the exquisite aspects of creatures.
I think we had not only one or two windows, actually one or two windows were especially about this, but all the windows were about the perfection of rububiyyah, the perfection of uluhiyyah, the perfection of and window 15 is also أحسن كل شيء خلقه. He created everything in the best ways. It's a theme that is repeated in the Quran. So I was talking about there are two levels. One is that everything is done perfectly, but before that is what has been so far taught to us through these 14 windows, which is that when we see things, we will see an activity that indicates a tremendous amount of wisdom and knowledge and ordering and administrating, and all this points to the existence of someone who is behind these activities, and these attributes, these qualities do not exist on their own. That will be Windows 16 will take that again, that point will be re-emphasized. Now, if we go through each window, each time, if we did our assignment, and each time we spend the whole week reflecting and contemplating and practicing what we learn, then we want to go back and be, how do you say, bothered by this and that. What other people do, they are doing, they do. We want to focus more on, how do you say, improving our own perception of the world, of the creation as ayat, interacting with them as ayat. Of course, this interaction, as the ayat at the very beginning says, is fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim, in the outer world and within ourselves. So at the same time, when we are witnessing, testifying, looking and observing all these things, in order to come to this conclusion, there is always an element of conscious choice, the decision to acknowledge the reality. Because I can see everything, I can even feel the awe, and then run away from it, and I don't want to acknowledge it. consciously, because when I acknowledge it consciously, it's going to include me. And that me, in the beginning, it's a big me, big I, doesn't want to surrender. That's why the whole of these teachings are called surrender Islam, because that's the hardest things to do inwardly. Inwardly, we want to still keep like an area where we can claim some creativity, some power, but we don't realize the contradictions and how counterproductive that uh, attitude is. The more we surrender to the reality, we will be at peace and in alignment with the reality that I have no power, everything is being given to me right now. And at the same time, this huge burden of trying to make things work, to create things, to control things, everything will be all that burden, which was only an illusion. I realized that there is no such a burden. Everything is being done unto us. And whatever is done is always the best, except when I meddle with the created order. And the biggest part of the meddling is that I fight with whatever is going on through my own comparing with my own fantasies. It's all a matter of perception, misperception, and living in my own illusion, which is also a delusion of the eye, and seeing everything in the mirror of that delusion. So back to tasbih. Tasbih is negating of shirk. Tasbih is seeing and witnessing and living and experiencing the beautiful names of God in everything. And therefore, the other side of it is there is no shirk. So tasbih is directly related to remembering God. So when we say Subhanallah, this is dhikrullah as well. He is remembering God. Thank you. It is remembering God after we witness his beautiful names, his beautiful attributes everywhere around us and within us. And so it is when we do this consciously, there is no room for shirk, which is based on this illusion that things own their qualities. The qualities that are displayed on them, we say that they are the qualities, and then it becomes they are the source of it. And because that's how we view ourselves. And so that's the biggest illusion of mindlessness of ghafla. Then, and it's only when we do this, then we can confirm and affirm that the creativity in the universe, in the world, within us, around us, display and indicate the absolute qualities that can only belong to the creator and sustainer of all things. And we can also affirm that he's far above the elements of shirk that may be ascribed to him in a state of ghafla. And in the 14th window, Imam Nursi, rahimahullah, he takes us further along the journey of knowing God consciously with his beautiful names and affirming and confirming Tawheed. And so in the 14th window, we're introduced to a very important aspect of how the creation glorifies its maker and mirrors his beautiful attributes, which is through contrast. And I will just go through without comment on through the 14th window because it's so important. Again, there are a few ayats at the beginning, and the text is a reflection on this ayat. And if you go and look at them in their context, you get even you understand more what's going on. According to the meaning of these verses, all things are in need of a single, all-glorious creator in everything, in all matters and circumstances. Indeed, we look at the beings in the universe and we see that there is the manifestation of an absolute force within an absolute weakness, and the traces of an absolute power and are apparent within an absolute weakness, impotence. Like, for example, the wonderful states and stages plants display when the life force awakens in their seeds and roots. There is the manifestation too of an absolute wealth within an absolute poverty and dryness, like the poverty of trees and the soil in winter and their glittering wealth and riches in the spring. The sprinkling of an absolute life are also apparent within an absolute lifelessness, like the transformation of the elements into living matter. There is, moreover, the manifestation of an all encompassing consciousness within an absolute ignorance, like everything from minute particles to the stars, acting consciously and conforming to the order of the universe and to the demands of wisdom and the requirements of life. Thus, this power within powerlessness and strength within weakness and wealth and riches within poverty and life and consciousness within lifelessness and ignorance necessarily and self evidently open up windows on every side onto the necessary existence and unity of a possessor of absolute power and absolute strength, a possessor of absolute riches and an absolute knowing, all living and self-sufficient one in their totality. They point to a luminous highway on a vast scale. So this is one way things, everything around us is acting as an ayah. So we learn what to focus on, what to pay attention to, and then it becomes our new way of interacting with the world and with how we perceive ourselves. I will start paying attention to my own powerlessness, my own lifelessness, my own ignorance, my own, and then I become a mirror reflecting the beautiful names of God. So life won't become my life. I won't be stealing from God's property, but I will realize that He is the living one, the giver of life. And I witness that He is the giver of life because He's giving me life right here and now. And today, inshallah, we're looking at all this through a new emphasis, because actually all this has been said, but now the emphasis is on the perfection within abundance and also art and this uniqueness, hadiyah. So it means it's not mechanical, it's not machine-like. If you look at all people's countenances, the face, each face is unique. So you understand that there is will, there is purpose, there is knowledge, there is an all-encompassing knowledge. It's not like people are just created through a law as if it's a machine. The law is the order of the creativity. Everything is created with order and wisdom, and that's how we can recognize it as a law. But it's not a mechanical deterministic law. There is always room for new things all the time. So here, this all-encompassingness, we can see the will and the purpose and the absolute power and knowledge. So in the 15th, it's a short window. Can someone just read it maybe, inshallah?
I can read it.
Bismillah.
According to the meaning of the verse, who has created everything in the best way? Everything is cut out according to its innate abilities, with perfect measure and order, and put together with the finest art in the shortest way, the best form, the lightest manner, and the most practicable shape. Look at the clothes of birds, for example, and the easy way they ruffle up their feathers and continuously use them. Also, things are given bodies and dressed in forms in a wise manner, with no waste and nothing in vain. They testify to their number, to the necessary existence of an all-wise maker, and point to that possessor of absolute power and knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you, Zahra. So here starts with this ayah. I think it's the ayah 7 of Surah Al-Sajda, Surah 32. الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. And here it's the everything, كل شيء, every single thing. The ayah is saying every single thing. He creates in the best way. And أحسن, there is perfection, there is also husn, there is beauty, and of course the creation is the manifestation of the beautiful names of God, al-asma al-husna. So definitely there is husn at all kinds of levels. And when we learn to look at the creation this way, then the more knowledge we have, like the more information, let's say, we have about any phenomena, about any event, instead of taking us away from God, when we don't know how to look this way, when we have not learned to consciously witness the beautiful names of God and witness that truly there is nothing worth worshipping except Him. There is no powerful except Him, no source of power, no source of knowledge except Him or His. When we do that, more information means even getting glorifying God even more and more. When we have not done that, when we are just following taqlidan, just how do you say, like through imitation, we're just repeating the words, but we have never actually experienced them, and we have no evidence, or we have not seen anything. We're just claiming that we are testifying, but we have not truly testified. Then the more there is information, like for instance in science, they go and dig what's going on, the more you say, oh, it seems like things are doing it. That's the tasbih. Things cannot do anything. So if water cannot create anything, why do you think that when you find that water is hydrogen and oxygen, now I understood, now water is a complicating things, it's making it? No. So what? It actually becomes more evidence to show how intricate the creation is, and that it cannot be what is being coming into existence cannot bring something into existence. They are themselves being created, as we are told in the Quran. So here it says everything is cut out according to its innate abilities with perfect measure and order. This measure, the qadar, and order is in everything. If it exists through measure and order. And they are put together with the finest art. Things are not just coming to fulfill a certain purpose like a machine. There is art, and this art is not only visually, but at all kinds of levels you can find art, like water, the music, the sound of water, the sound of birds, for instance.
And just to add one more example out of endless examples, some of you may recall in the retreat, annual retreat, we discussed briefly the ear cells, how the cells in the ear are so delicate and doing amazing, incredible job. And by the way, those of you who would like to see the recordings of the annual retreat, we have had sessions with Dr. Yamina, as well as with other people like Dr. Faraz and Sarah. You may find them in the Receiving Nur YouTube channel.
Yeah. So those cells, they don't only fulfill a purpose, but they are also very pretty, it's like the food we eat. Like you have an apple, it doesn't have to look pretty. Not only, let's say outside, someone may say no, so that it attracts your attention. How about inside? Why do we open it and it's pretty? And things that most of us will never see, like in the ocean, in the galaxies. But they are all created with fine arts in the shortest way, the best form, the lightest manner, and most practical shape, especially when you look at living beings, insects, birds, and things. Each one has the most practical shape for its environment and for what it needs. For instance, if it's a bird feeds on, how do you say, on fish, it lives in water, for instance, in lakes, then it has very long legs and beak, for instance, to make it like the best for.
And its vision is so sharp to see through water because there's fraction of the light in the water. It can circulate that.
Yeah, if it did not take into account that, it will always miss its prey. But everything is done perfectly. Look, for instance, he's giving one simple example. Look at the clothes of birds, for example, and the easy way they ruffle up their feathers and continuously use them. It looks like many, many, many feathers, but like they use them as one whole thing. It's like someone studying us and think, oh, they have so many skin cells, but we're not even aware of it. It's just like, it's skin and that's it. But skins has layers and so many things. Even the skin is not as simple as we think.
And the weight of the feather, right? It's I think it's empty inside so that
they follow so that they can, yeah, because they're going to fly. Also, things are given bodies and dressed in forms in a wise manner, with no waste and nothing in vain. All this they testify to their numbers, and now their numbers are, because they are interconnected, it's like components within components within components. They testify to the necessary existence of an all-wise maker and point to that possessor of absolute power and knowledge. I mean, if we take only feathers and They have so many, feathers have so many uses, right? What uses do they? We don't have to go and study really to find out the way birds use their feathers. I remember like at school there were like more than the feathers themselves. There are different types, but let's forget about that. Just like feathers in general. There's flying, right?
Keeping
landing, to land down like a parachute. Landing.
Yeah, let's say it's part of the flying and landing.
Cloaking, protection, warmth.
Protection, yeah, protection. Well, from weather, insulation, let's say, warm and regulating the temperature, but also from like how do you say, scratches, or they don't get hurt easily. So yeah, protection.
Balance.
Yes, balance. Mm-hmm.
To attract others.
Yeah, so it's also like, let's say, kind of communication. Yeah, communication. And also camouflage, maybe attract others, and sometimes they want to hide, right? To hide from other prey.
Yeah, as shields.
As shields, yeah, yeah. And as clothes. And for most of them, it's a waterproof kind of clothes, right? They most of the birds, they fly when it's raining. So many, Allahu Alam, there may be many other functions of these feathers. And this is without talking about the different kinds of feathers. And as Isra said, like from outside, they are very light, but inside, like the shaft in the middle is also hollow. Whoever is making this is making the whole thing. It knows like the conditions of the air, of the atmosphere, of flying, of everything. You cannot imagine a bird on its own without the rest of the world. And in the same way, we cannot imagine the feather without the bird. And all the colors, there are so many different colors. I mean, when you look on in an encyclopedia or something, it's just so amazing. But even in the backyard, you see so many different shapes and colors. Subhanallah. Blue and red and black and white and gray. And all with different shapes. And this is just birds. So this is really, they testify to their numbers, to the necessary existence of an all-wise maker, because there is wisdom and purpose and power and knowledge. Someone knows and has the power to do all this.
And to add another example out of endless examples of this wisdom, even like tiny things that they supposedly thought were simpler, like bacteria, it turned out that they have very nuanced tools to move. For instance, there's this kind of bacteria, they thought it's just gliding through the things. But then when they looked close, and this is recently found, that they actually have interlocking, I don't know the technical mechanical details, but the names, but they have interlocking gears that do things with the friction and so on. And so they are gliding and it's easy, but it's not like a simple slipping. There's actually delicate structures inside them. So that's why all these discussion references to simpler creatures or more sophisticated creatures, it kind of it dissolves, because even the simplest ones have what is most fitting for their needs, and what is needed for them is provided really well. So this is one out of endless examples of how creatures are.
I mean, like many insects, for instance, their eyes, and they seem to see like 300. They have a 360 degrees with the vision, and you look at their eyes, and each eye is made of so many small eyes. They have like a mosquito has like in the pilots in the plane, they have all those cameras before them to be able to see all kinds of things, and they have to be managing all these cameras. They have to learn to do that, and they can miss something. But this mosquito is like created with the innate abilities, at the very beginning to receive information from all those eyes at the same time. Subhanallah. Subhanallah means this mosquito can't be doing it. Anything in the world cannot be doing it. Only one who has the power to know, to control, to everything, and has the knowledge and the power and the wisdom can create this, because this seeing, this eye, and this way, the way it functions in the world, needs the whole world to be like this. So that's why we say subhanallah, this is beyond anything in this world. Nothing in this world can create it. Only the maker of everything can make this. It is an ayah, it is a miracle.
And one more thing to share. I remember from my biochemistry class many years ago, the professor said, nature always follows the shortest path.
It's true.
It's true. It's just that it's not nature making.
It's not nature. But the shortest path, the easiest, is also, yeah.
Sarah, did you want to say something?
Ziba, mashallah, reminded me of this Netflix documentary called My Octopus Teacher. And it's a man who discovers in a very close relationship
Sarah, you are muted.
Oh, thank you, Ziva. So the man goes to visit the octopus every single day because of his intrigue with the way that the octopus, he didn't know it was an octopus when he first saw it. He just saw something that looked like a tree of shells isolated in the water. And he thought it was a very strange thing in the water. He's been diving for some time. And then it let go of all the shells and ran away. It was just holding many, with each of its suckers on all of its arms, holding something to protect itself. Anyhow, so this man he was incredibly enamored by this creature. So you get pulled into this story because he was literally in love. He went every single day to try to build a relationship and trust with this creature. I urge everyone to watch it. It was extremely captivating. And he finds, so we speak of the clothing, the cloth, and the perfection and abundance. And all of those words are very striking about this one particular creature, because it changes not only the color of its, well, it's not that, it's somehow given an incredible suit of armor that changes color and texture instantaneously as it walks past things, like amazing. And also when its arm like breaks off, you find within, I think it was like 10 days, it was like unable to move, but then a new one just came out of nowhere. So new clothing was given instantaneously to help its function. I think within 100 days, it got back into its total function. So, and this man like just sincerely reports his absolute just enamored feelings of how this creature could be so intelligent. He was literally like in awe. And so when you watch it with this level of understanding of the Quranic teachings, it really just takes home this message. Inshallah, everyone watches it. I just wanted to share that.
And the most amazing part was how it was able to, like it showed the feeling like he was about, when he felt that the man was not a threat to him, he was touching him like human beings, like you touch and see how it feels, and then caressing him, coming to his chest, and so that's out of, like, you need to see it to feel it. Subhanallah.
Mm. So this brings us to the 16th window. The 16th window, there are two things. One is that everything is constantly renewed, so it cannot be explained through causes, because it's the miracle is not happening once, but again and again, constantly. And also something that is very, very important that we may take for granted, but sometimes if we're not conscious of this reasoning, then you see around us, people can see something like this, they are at awe, but then either attribute everything to that being, because I'm attributing everything to myself, or some people even, like, more and more you hear people, they used to say nature, now they say the universe. Like, the universe has this and that. So here it's about, if there is order and ordering, then these attributes cannot be without the one they qualify. They must be an orderer. This is also very important. So shall we read the 16th window, inshallah? Even if we don't finish, at least we can start.
I can read, inshallah. Bismillah. 16th window. The order and ordering in the creation and disposal of creatures, which are renewed season by season on the earth, shows clearly a universal wisdom. Since an attribute cannot be without the one it qualifies, the universal wisdom necessarily shows an all-wise one. The wonderful adornment within the veil of wisdom self-evidently shows a perfect beneficence, and that perfect beneficence necessarily points to a gracious, all-generous creator. The all-encompassing benevolence and bestowal within the veil of beneficence show self-evidently an all-embracing mercy, and that all-embracing mercy shows necessarily an all-merciful and all-compassionate one. The sustenance and foods of all living creatures, above the veil of mercy, all perfectly appropriate for their needs, show clearly a sustaining providence and a compassionate dominicality, and that sustaining and administering necessarily point to an all-generous provider. Yes, all the creatures on the face of the earth thus raised with perfect wisdom, adorned with perfect beneficence, bestowed upon with perfect mercy, and nurtured with perfect compassion, testify to the necessary existence of an all-wise, munificent, compassionate, providing maker, and points to his unity. Look at and consider also the universal wisdom which is apparent on the face of the earth as a whole, and is to be seen in its totality, and shows clearly purpose and will, and the perfect beneficence embracing all creatures, which comprises the wisdom, and the all-encompassing mercy which comprises the beneficence and wisdom, and includes all the beings of the earth, and the most generous sustaining and nurturing, which comprises the mercy and wisdom and beneficence, and embraces all living creatures. Just as the 7 colors form light, and the light which illuminates the face of this earth undoubtedly shows the sun, so too that beneficence within wisdom, and mercy within beneficence, and sustaining and nurturing within mercy show brilliantly on a large scale and at a high degree the unity and perfect dominicality of an utterly wise, generous, compassionate, providing necessarily existent one. O you stupefied and heedless denier, with what can you explain this wise, generous, compassionate, providential, sustaining, this strange, wonderful, miraculous state of affairs which is before your eyes? With chance and coincidence, which are aimless like you, with force which is blind like your heart, with nature which is deaf like your head, with causes which are impotent, lifeless, and ignorant like you? Or do you want to give the name of nature, which is utterly impotent, ignorant, deaf, blind, contingent, and wretched, to the all-glorious one, who is utterly holy, pure, exalted, and free of all defect, and absolutely powerful, knowing, hearing, and seeing, and thus perpetrate an infinite error? So with what force can you extinguish this truth brilliant as the sun? Under which veil of heedlessness can you conceal it?
Thank you. Thank you. As far as we are concerned, mostly it's going to be not denying, but in our times of ghafla, of mindlessness, of forgetfulness, because we have not learned to remember God. Remember means we have to know God first. We have to testify the ayat that reminds us, that makes him known. And so we will remember him whenever we see them. Because we have not learned that, and because we live most of the time in a state of mindlessness, and because we are not always watching an octopus or something, things around us that are as miraculous, like in the Quran, the day and night, meaning the sunrise and sunset, the rain, the water around us, the food, the fact that we see and hear, the fact that we understand what we hear, that we speak, all kinds of things. The fact that we eat, we swallow, we digest, everything that is happening around us on a daily basis, we tend to take them for granted because we have not learned to pause, wait, contemplate, and learn to interact with them in the way we are taught in the Quran. The Quran, we read it, if we read it, those, alhamdulillah, those who read, and then we put it there. It's not our daily guide in life. But so if we don't do that, we take things for granted. And so we are by default looking at things as though, not with awe, as though they just exist on their own. And by default, without intending it, that's what ghafla is about. That's what mindlessness is about, not intending. We end up not finding all this, the compassionate, the wise, the all knowing, all powerful one in every situation, day in, day out. So we need to, why am I saying this? Because we are reading this for ourselves. We read the Quran for ourselves. We are not reading for the kuffars of Mecca or whatever, before, of Quraysh, before Islam, or the non something, or no, we're reading for ourselves. And the Quran speaks to those who, to its audience. And we are told again and again, why don't you think? If you ask them who is the creator of everything, they say God. Why are you then so deluded? Why are you still living in shirk then? We are told again and again. So this is our problem, and this is something that we need to work on and to take seriously, because when we are not remembering God, we are away from God. We are in a state of shirk. This is very important. In a state of shirk means away from the source of all goodness and perfection. And it's not like, it does not affect only our here and now, or when we are in ghafla, we don't have a sense of here and now. We think of our life in this world as if it's one big block, which is, it's not, it's flowing all the time. But we're not only disconnecting ourselves from the source of all what we long for, what we desire, what we need, not only in this world, in this life, but forever. So I'm just saying what is at stake is extremely important, here and now and forever. So how about we have groups and to discuss this 16th window, and how many minutes do you think we need? And then we come back, we reconvene and share. How about that?
Should we do 5 to 7 minutes?
7 minutes? Okay. So the one who is putting people into groups needs to keep the time, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah, I will push the button and hopefully everyone will get a notice that you're being put into groups. So inshallah, just give me a few seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone has been assigned a room, so you should get a notice asking you to join. Dr. Yamina, everyone will be back in about 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, I clicked by by mistake, so I'm out of my group.
That felt short.
Yeah, I went fast.
Well, welcome back, everyone.
Now I experience what it means to be in a breakout group. I tend to put people in the group when I'm teaching and so on. But it does go fast.
You can carry on now, inshallah.
Just getting warmed up and then it was over.
Next time we can make it 10 minutes, inshallah.
So what yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, are we gonna like ask the groups to share? Inshallah.
Inshallah.
So maybe
You are muted, Alia.
I'm just saying maybe we can say group 1 to go first, then group 2, or if they're not ready, other groups go in. So I didn't know who was group 1, but let's hear them first. Bismillah.
I think everybody's wondering who's group 1.
I can
We were group 4.
Group 2.
Naima.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay. I don't know. We keep going, but I'm going to go ahead and share what we were talking. We were in group 2, and Sibel asked the question of how can we be so blind when there is this immense amount of wisdom and art and beauty that we see around us? What is it that we are more interested in complaining and whining instead of appreciating and noticing? So we were reflecting on that, and it seems like one reason is that ego makes it look like you're more, as if you're more active when you're complaining, as if when you say no and try to find faults, as if you have more agency than when you notice in awe and appreciation, and which is a false sense of agency. It's really not an agency when you're denying something, but ego makes it look like that. That's all for now.
Thank you. It's an important question to ponder and reflect on.
I like the full sense of agency. We were group 3, so our group, mashallah, we have a newcomer, mashallah, Iqbal, and what she shared was really beautiful. And we had Jamila and Sister Amina. And so the sharings went along that there is an imprintation, like there's an imprint of the creator in everyone's soul that makes everyone realize that there must be a creator. And that when ego is no more there, and that ego, was described, Iqbal described it as like when you wake up, I get into a suit, like, that suit that, like, that I'm getting into is sort of a default But when I pause and get rid of that suit and I become who I'm supposed to become, then there is more of flow and connection with everything. And then Jalila brought that connection. You know, she could feel it as Sarah was speaking about the octopus and the man and the connection between both of them. Like, you know, the relationship that that is happening underwater, not just like with regular pets up there, but like, you know, things that we don't think they would have, like, you know, relation to us, but also for the octopus to see the human being as a, you know, as an object of connection. Like, so that flow and connection with everything is something that you can actually feel. And Jalila thought it felt like a warm blanket around her to feel that. And then Sister Amina was saying, like, you know, how when we tap into the space of realizing who the source is, that then that we get to taste this mercy, and then everything then, you know, has a unique taste that we did not have before. That was group 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. It's Naima. Ziba and I were group 4. It was just she and I, which was alhamdulillah. So we had a lot of time to talk about a lot of things. And one of the things that we talked about was living in a state of awareness and consciousness, and really being in this space of like, and that's consciousness. And one of the things that we talked about too was how nothing that's created is identical, and that by even identical twins are not identical. They all have their own like form, fashion, personality, and only Allah could create such unique characteristics that are not able to be duplicated. And that by itself is pause for us to really be in awe. And something we didn't talk about, but something that I was thinking about, you know, about like the fingerprint of a human. Nobody has the same fingerprint. And when you think about the rings of a tree, when you cut it down, that's a fingerprint of a tree to me. It's the same like shape, and none of those are the same. And none of them live the same time. You know, when they die, you cut it down. None of those are the same age. And so it's just amazing when you think about, like, if you think about trees and you think if you cut the ring, like the tree down, and you think about the ring and the fingerprint of the tree, every tree has its own signature. And the signatures from Allah. And it's just mashallah when I think about that and the expansiveness of who Allah is. And it's just, I mean, I don't know how you cannot live in awe. And then there's a part of me that's wondering, like, how can you be forgetful when there's so much around you to be in awe of? And that's it, really.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Saira here. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Yamina.
Walaikum salam.
Ji, I'm sorry I had to step away to the bathroom while I wanted to engage in the group discussion, so I missed that. But I realize as I'm going through these windows description, and as you explained, and from what I hear from the different groups, the compassion and the generosity and the all giving kind of a quality that Allah Ta'ala has. I think that's why Allah Ta'ala asks us to share and feed and give sadaqah and be hospitable, because it's a quality that we often forget. I admit I sometimes got stingy, and Allah Ta'ala doesn't like being stingy, nor does he like being arrogant, because of the sustenance that perhaps he provides for us to become the reason why somebody else could have a meal, if we are generous and if we are doing it sincerely for the sake of Allah. So while I am appreciative of all the blessings that Allah has given me, one of the signs that I take from any ayat now, especially becoming more mindful of my relationship with Quran, alhamdulillah, is that even if I have the last piece of bread in my hand or a whole loaf is sitting in my parents' home and I see that my family and I cannot eat, I'm not trying to puppet for myself, but honestly, I feel so scared that either it is going to go bad, and if no bird came and I put it outside in the backyard of my parents' home where I'm staying, then I wish I could give it to some human. And yes, I could go to Providence, the little city here in Rhode Island, where there might be some homeless still on the street who would perhaps accept that loaf of bread from me. But I wonder that even if my mother and I were to freeze that extra bread, or next time not bring that extra bread, are we doing something wrong? Because managing food in a way that it is sustenance by Allah, and if I cannot consume it, I must then give it to somebody who needs it. Whereas Allah's giveness is everywhere in the amount of diversity in salads and in vegetables and in fruits that we see, in dry fruits that we see, the types of olives that there are, the types of figs and dates that there are, the types of honey that there is, the different salty and sweet water that there is. I mean, yes, who creates this abundance? And then it makes me think about the afterlife. That's why Allah Ta'ala keeps telling us and inviting us that I'm going to not only reward you with Jannah if you do X, Y, and Z, and with my will, you do get into Jannah. But then there are so many things that you can't even imagine that are there that I've created or prepared for you.
Sister Sarah,
So,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are groups I think that haven't shared. So
oh, please go
yeah,
ahead.
go
My
back.
question, yeah, go ahead. My question to you is, if at some point you could share light on, am I thinking the right way that abundance is something which is a divine quality, and we are obviously supposed to be reflecting that by being generous ourselves? Thank you.
Yes, inshallah. Thank you. And so we can come back to the groups who wanted to share their discussion on the window.
Yeah.
Did groups 5 share?
I think we had group 1 left. If anyone from group 1 would like to share.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I'm not sure if I was in group 1, but I was with Sister Batul and Huda.
Yes, I think that's group 1. Uh-huh.
Please, Batul or Huda, pipe in. I just took to the mic. I missed the key question of what the exercise was, but I had heard everything else before that. And I basically initiated the discussion on, instead of looking outside and being in awe of everything, that we can actually look at ourselves and inside of us and be in awe of everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, in the sense that, how we breathe, how we see, how we move, how our body eliminates waste, how our blood and the immune system, it's just, the list is endless, to be in awe of our own body and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that. And everything else outside is just like even more of a bonus of curiosity of his magnificent ability, which we have very little knowledge of. And we don't know half the things that are living in the oceans. We don't know about half the things that are living in the earth. And every time there's a new discovery of this creature, that creature, we're always in awe and subhanallah. So we just shared how we appreciated our own bodies and are in awe of how everything works within ourselves before we look outside. If the others want to pipe in, feel free. Jazakallah.
Thank you. The discussion was to be on the 16th window. For me, the most important thing is at the very beginning when he says that the order and ordering in the creation and the disposal of creatures are renewed. So he says season by season, but actually we can take it season by season, week by week, day by day. I mean, if it's happening every season, it's happening gradually. So there is this constant change and order and ordering. And it shows, he says, clearly a universal wisdom, a wisdom that encompasses all these activities. Of course, because before the interconnectivity was discussed in other windows. And since an attribute cannot be without the one it qualifies, this universal wisdom necessarily shows a wise and all-wise one. I think here the link in the reasoning is this sentence. If we see wise activity, it means there is wisdom. It means this wisdom points to, shows an all-wise one. And not only this reasoning is important, the way we go from the order and ordering with wisdom in the creation to there is wisdom, therefore this shows an all-wise one. Because what we learned is we see something, we are at awe, and then we say, oh, Allah created it. Okay, how about something that we see every day and now we lost our sense of awe? So this method of claiming, of course it's not wrong, it's correct that God created it, but like this is not what the Quran is teaching us, because otherwise then after a while a beautiful flower opens up, we are all marveling, and then if we have it there sitting there, we forget about it or we take it for granted now. The sun rises, maybe once in a while, it has a beautiful color or something, it attracts our attention, but most of the time we take it for granted. Now with this reasoning and the way the Quran is telling us, attracting our attention on so-called ordinary things. If ordinary things bring out the awe within us, puts us, if we are at awe, then what the so-called extraordinary things, that will come too. So we have to learn to reassess, to look at the world that we take for granted in a new way, and that the end of our interaction will bring us an awareness of God in a new way, so that our belief is going to increase each time we see something and stay with that awe, stay with whatever the feelings we feel, and then reason with the heart, reason with these feelings, and there is all this order and ordering everywhere. Clearly there is wisdom. This wisdom shows, it's an ayah to the all-wise one. This is the all-wise one. What I am witnessing is his wisdom. Now I am testifying, I'm making shahada, I am getting to know God in a new way every day at each interaction. I'm getting closer. I'm not saying, oh God, created this. God is an unknown in the beginning, created this, and then I pass quickly because I take it for granted that I know God, I believe in God. Remember, Imam Nursi says, and it's something very important, to not deny the existence of God is not Iman Billah, is not belief in God. Belief in God is a conscious knowing God, experiencing, testifying his, for instance, his wisdom, and therefore his being all wise, and then saying, yes, this is indicating, showing an all wise one. Then I can say this is the creation of the all wise one. But the creation is the starting point. Now my heart is going to open up each time, and it's going to be filled with Iman. And this Iman starts with knowing God with his beautiful names. Now I get closer and closer to knowing God, who he is. As we know God, who do you think we will love? The heart is created to love the source of the perfection and the goodness. If my heart is still attached to the beautiful things themselves, it means I am still living in the illusion that there is a horizontal relationship between me and that thing, and that thing is benefiting me. For instance, water, for instance, food, for instance, whatever, the sun. And totally unrelated, totally disconnected from that, there is a God and he's created this. But when I witness God in my interaction, then there is suddenly no horizontal relationship. My relationship between me and that thing takes me, that thing goes to God, back to me. It takes me to the all-wise and then back to me. It's always through him. And the simple example that I give is my telephone is not connected to anyone else's telephone directly. It's always connected through a satellite. But if you ask, for instance, a kid who doesn't know about the satellite, they will think it's like, I call, it answers, that's it. It means they are directly connected. And so that is how we are interconnected to the rest of the world. This step looks very maybe simple, but it's something that we miss all the time. And that's why we find ourselves forgetting again and again, because we have not learned to find the countenance of God, to find the beautiful names of God, to find God within the creation. We have not seen how the creation functions as ayah, as mirrors reflecting the beautiful names of God. How we have not learned how they glorify him with praise, and therefore we are not glorifying God by means of their glorifications. Our glorification is like pasting on top, and that's why it doesn't last. Immediately after, we forget everything because we didn't learn anything. We already have an acceptance that the God, which is we need to start there, that there must be God, but who is God? We need to learn who is this God? So the fact that we don't deny is necessary and it's good. It's the starting point. We cannot use it as if it is the end. Each time we have to go from the order, the ordering, wisdom, all wise. The next one is there is adornment within the wisdom. We talked about the adornment of all the birds and the octopus and human beings and fruits and everything. The adornment within the veil of wisdom self-evidently shows beneficence, perfect beneficence. And that perfect beneficence necessarily points to a gracious, all generous creator. And then we say, oh yeah, now we know God through in a new way, from a new aspect. We feel closer to him. Our iman increases. Yes, Isra.
Dr. Yemen, this is a very, very important point. And I find it very helpful because when you started talking, the first thing that came to my mind was as a title, like the power of naming, in the sense that when I say, oh, Allah made this and move on, then yes, Allah made it, but the way I say it, the way I name this makes the most difference. If I am starting from the top, as you said, as if I know Allah without witnessing, then the glorification only lasts to that to the extent that I have awe, and awe comes and then it goes. At that moment, you're surprised. Oh, I never knew that this creature did this, and then it becomes knowledge, and then that's where we tend to lose because we don't have the proper steps and naming. The popular culture and science and so on, they throw in a name. They call this is natural. This is the law of nature or something. They throw in a name, and because we don't have the proper naming, we get lost in there. We say, oh, this is amazing, this butterfly does this, and then here is they throw in a name that they say, well, this is the butterfly rule or whatever, and then we are taken in with that name and move on or get lost.
True. However, even if I never heard of science, I could fall into that pit.
Yes, because we have other names. This is usual, this is normal. This
exactly.
Butterfly.
Exactly. Actually, science is like this because the scientists are like that.
Yeah. It just has additional jargon to kind of, dazzle.
So just that we don't think it's all because of science. No, it's all because of ghafla. All because we are not willing to do the work. And that's why, no wonder, again and again, it's like a vicious circle. We find ourselves, why do I keep forgetting?
And what
I never remembered, truly.
Yeah, exactly.
I remembered in a very vague way.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. So we can see this process of going through the windows or reflecting on creation, a matter of clarifying instead of seeing things behind vague glasses, to really zoom in and name not just in the sense of putting a label, but identify. What do I see here? I see exquisite order. What does that point to? It points to universal wisdom. And what does that necessarily bring me to? An all-wise one, Al-Hakim. So this process...
This is need to be done as a contemplation. The heart has to acknowledge this process.
Yes. I think this is a very beautiful crystallization. We might even excerpt this as a separate video. I think this clarified a lot of things. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. So you can, inshallah, read and meditate and contemplate on what is being said in the 16th window. Stay in the text. What is this teaching? Don't take the awe and run away with it. No, no, no. Awe is okay, something everyone feels the awe. It's like gratitude. When we are in a happy state, we appreciate what's given, things that we like. We appreciate, we are made to appreciate. Allah is the Shakir. Now, that appreciation, that gratitude, to who or to what we give it consciously, is the difference between the grateful to God and the mindless ungrateful. If they are grateful in this world, they get, it's better than the one who complains and is totally ungrateful. But if you want it in this world and in the next here and now, because the akhirah makes a whole difference here and now, then the difference is to realize that it is from God. And it's the same with awe. When we see something, everyone is at awe. But what we do with it, from the awe, from what we observe there, from what we experience, what we feel, stay there, be patient from there to the wisdom, the adornment, the beneficence, to the beneficent, to the generous one, to the always wine, to the, we need to go through the steps. Otherwise, we will say, yes, it's God who made it. And then lots of things, we have no awe over them because we take them for granted. And so if we wait for that rare moment, how are we going to remember God and practice dhikrullah on a daily, constantly? When we learn this, we will start being at awe in everything, every step, every time we look, every time we hear something, every time we look at our food, as we are told in the Quran, فَلْيَنْظُرُ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. Let human being look at the food he eats. Everything we will feel the awe when we go through this contemplation, through this way of reasoning with the heart and meditating and contemplating. Always we will come to a place of awe, a place of sajda, before the awesomeness, the adama, the might of the Creator that is displayed, that the creation, the wisdom, the beneficence, the order, the adornment in the creation is showing and reflecting to us. So it seems simple, it's very important. Otherwise, if you practice this, you will see that you won't forget. Everything will remind you of that. In the beginning, everything, you will practice it on everything until nothing will become, make us forget God. Nothing will be a veil. It's the opposite. Everything will be like a screen where the beautiful names of God play and are reflected, inshallah. So
we have a homework.
My suggestion, for me personally, this is what I will do. So my suggestion is that everyone, but be faithful, stay with the text. Otherwise, if I read it and then the discussion has nothing to do with the text, then yes, all the discussions are useful. However, we have not learned from this 16th window. What is this saying here?
I wonder if we can take any volunteers to share next week. Anyone who would like to, we can have a couple people actually who would like to share
Great.
their engagement with the text. It doesn't mean we understand everything.
No.
We have questions about it.
The intention is to engage the text, and in a way that we want to learn something to practice. Inshallah. So
Can I volunteer, Sibel?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. So are we going to meet next week today?
Yes,
At this
Wednesday.
time? Okay, so we are going to focus on 16 window, on the first window on the 16th word.
no, 16th window of the 33rd word.
I'm sorry, yeah. 16th window of the 33rd word.
Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.